Consciousness rooted in delusion. 11. 1. Consciousness accompanied by equanimity associated with doubt. 12. 1. Consciousness accompanied by equanimity associated with restlessness. These two types of consciousness involve sheer delusion. Thus, end in all the 12 types of unwholesome consciousness. Guide to consciousness rooted in delusion. Consciousness rooted in delusion, moha mula chittanti. This last class of unwholesome consciousness comprises those chittas in which the other two unwholesome roots, greed and hatred, are absent. Usually, delusion leads to the arising of greed and hatred as well. But though delusion is always present as a root in chittas accompanied with greed and hate, its function there is subordinate. In these last two types of unwholesome consciousness, however, delusion alone is present as an unwholesome root, and thus they are classified as consciousness rooted in delusion. Because the function of delusion is especially evident in these two types of consciousness, they are also described as consciousness involving sheer delusion, moha citta. The Pali word momuha being an intensification of moha, delusion. There are two types of consciousness in which delusion is especially prominent. One is associated with doubt, the other is with restlessness. Accompanied by equanimity, upekha sahagata, even if a desirable object is present, when a delusion-rooted consciousness arises, it is not experienced as desirable and thus pleasant mental feeling, somanassa, does not arise. Similarly, an undesirable object is not experienced as such, and thus unpleasant mental feeling, domanassa, does not arise. Moreover, when the mind is obsessed by doubt or restlessness, it is not capable of forming a determinate positive or negative evaluation of the object, and thus cannot be associated with either pleasant or painful feeling. For these reasons, the feeling that accompanies these two chittas is neutral, the feeling of equanimity, upekka. Associated with doubt, vichikiccha sampayutta, the commentators give two etymological explanations of the word vichikiccha: vexation due to perplexed thinking, and being devoid of the remedy consisting in knowledge. Both these explanations indicate that vichikiccha, doubt, means perplexity, skepticism, or indecisiveness due to the prevalence of delusion. The chitta associated with this doubt is the first type of consciousness rooted in delusion. Associated with restlessness, uddacca sampayutta. Restlessness is disquietude, mental distraction or agitation, and the chitta infected by this restlessness is the second type of consciousness rooted in delusion. According to the Abhidhamma, the mental factor of restlessness is found in all 12 unwholesome chittas. But in the other 11 chittas, its force or sati is relatively weak and its function is secondary. However, in this last type of chitta, restlessness becomes the chief factor. Thus, this last type alone is described as consciousness associated with restlessness. It should be noted that no qualification in terms of prompted or unprompted is attached to the description of these two chittas, rooted in delusion. The commentators offer different explanations for this omission. The Vibhavini Tika and the Maha Tika to the Visuddhimagga maintain that the distinction in terms of prompting is omitted because neither alternative is applicable. They state that since these two chittas lack neutral acuteness, they cannot be described as unprompted. And since there is no occasion when one deliberately tries to arouse them, they cannot be described as prompted. Lady Siado, however, rejects this position, holding these chittas to be exclusively unprompted. He contends since these two chittas occur in beings naturally by their own intrinsic nature, they need not be aroused by any inducement or expedient means. They always occur without trouble or difficulty. Therefore, they are exclusively unprompted. And this should be seen as the reason the distinction by way of prompting is not mentioned here.